Newspoll out today. I guess you can suggest that perhaps the government has passed its first test when it comes to reaction from the budget. Fairly glowing praise across the board for what the budget had in it.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. I think it's pretty good news for the government. They'd be happy with this, and the Australian reported the day after the budget last week that really it had two key objectives. The first was obviously to try and beat the recession, to navigate the economic crisis, but obviously the second objective is to try and help win the election. So those are the sort of the twin goals that the government's hoping to achieve. And looking at those Newspoll figures this morning, you'd think that both Josh Frydenberg and Scott Morrison have got to be pretty happy. So if you just look at the sort of the straight political polling, you've got the coalition primary on 44. Now that's pretty good. It's 44 for the government, 34 for Labor. When you look at the election result, I think they had about 41.4% primary, just scraping into government for that miracle election win for Scott Morrison. So they're sitting pretty well on the primary vote, 52-48 on 2PP. And the good news for them is there's also a very positive response to the actual budget itself. Now, that's probably not that surprising. The tax cuts are very popular, so over 80% support for the tax cuts there, Pete.
Yeah.
And generally, people think they're going to be better off financially, and more people think it was overall a good budget. But there is, I think, a problem for the government, and that's in the polling figures for their huge flagship wage subsidy scheme. And people are concerned that this has been targeted at that younger age group. So workers up to 35 years old. 57% of people say that this should be expanded, and I think that there'll be a political fight for the government over this scheme. Labor's already picked up on this, and the Senate will certainly scrutinise it. The government wants to get this through the Parliament as fast as it can. It wasn't in that legislation that passed last week, so I expect that there might be some changes that Labor and the crossbench potentially put up to that legislation to try and expand it, and also address deficiencies that they think could see employers rorting that scheme.
Yeah, I found one of the stats I found quite interesting, Joe, was that 79% of Labor voters backed it. Is that a surprise to you?
Well, in some ways it is. That's very high. That's a very high figure. But it is an extraordinary time. We are going through a 1 in 100 year health crisis. We are going through a very severe recession. So I think probably in times like this, people are going to sort of view the budget more on its merits rather than sort of taking a partisan approach to it. And certainly the government tried to ensure that there were winners across the board from this budget. That's what they tried to do. And you can see that Anthony Albanese's response from the Labor perspective really is he's fighting over sort of the scraps or the areas really that the government sort of didn't to Labor's perspective, address sufficiently. So they're looking specifically at women, they're looking at older workers, etc. So that's the Labor strategy. But I think the problem for Anthony Albanese at the moment is while he's sort of picking out these demographics, I don't know whether that's sufficient for him to sort of build a coalition of support to go on and win the election on.
Yeah. Let's go to Victoria now. And the Treasurer was on the show a short time ago, and he's given the Premier another serve. Needs those borders open. It looks as though Daniel Andrews, on one front, he's not going to ease restrictions when it comes to business and retail anytime soon. It's going to be more on the social side of things next weekend, and that is of particular frustration to the Premier, to Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. But also, it looks as though he's going to give up his phone records. So this scandal keeps rolling on.
Absolutely. I think this issue about who made the decision on the private security arrangements within the Victorian hotel quarantine scheme is one of the big unanswered questions. We have a board of inquiry that's been set up. We still don't have an answer to this. No one has taken political accountability for it. The public deserve an answer. In Victoria, there are over 800 deaths. So the public deserves a response. The Premier has done the right thing in handing over those phone records for him, his staff, and Chris Eccles for that key day, that March 27 day, when the decision was made. And obviously all the attention is focused around that 6-minute window from 1:16 to 1:22, when we know the former police commissioner was told. That's the window that he was told that this decision had been made. We just don't know who made that decision. So they've certainly done the right thing, and I hope that there are some answers out of it. But in terms of the extension of the state of emergency and disaster, I'm very sympathetic to Josh Frydenberg's view on this, and I think it shows that the initial assumptions or targets that were set by Victoria were too ambitious. I think they got that wrong. And I remember coming on your program a while ago, Pete, and saying that those targets were too high. The threshold was too high. And so, of course, we're seeing now an extension of these conditions. But that rolling 14-day average case number of 5, I just think the bar was set too high, and of course we've got further heartbreak for businesses, and there will be businesses that go to the wall because of that.